Hi, I'm Ellen Gunning and my business is the PR Training Academy. I'm also a member of the Executive Council of EADL, the European Association of Distance Learning. I'm joined today by Dr. Christos Hadianis, who is the Quality Director with the Cyprus Institute of Marketing. He is also a member of EADL, the European Association of Distance Learning, and he's joining me to chat about really how the Institute is coping in this post-coronavirus or mid-coronavirus situation that we all find ourselves in. Christos, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
For anybody who doesn't know, you tell me a little bit about the Cyprus Institute of Marketing.
The Cyprus Institute of Marketing is Cyprus's finest, would like to think, business school. We were set up in 1978. So we celebrated our 40th anniversary 2 years ago. We operate a campus in Nicosia, which is the capital city of Cyprus, and a second campus in the second largest city, Limassol. We've had a campus there since 1984. As a business school, we offer both undergraduate and postgraduate programs. Our specialisms are in accounting and finance, marketing, management, shipping. And we, for the last 10 years, we've been offering programs with the University of West London in Cyprus as a franchise, and we offer 2 undergraduate programs with them, as well as a really thriving and very popular MSc in digital marketing. So that's one half of us, or I should say 60% of us. The other is that since 1982, we've been offering distance learning programs. Our market it has traditionally been Africa. We're very strong in Malawi, in Uganda, in Botswana, in Cameroon, in Zambia. We also operate in closer to home in Dubai. We have had students in Egypt. So we've been, I'm in the very fortunate, or I should say interesting position in knowing how we responded both as a DL business and as a sort of like, on-campus business. And I think one helped the other.
Do you teach the same courses by distance that you also teach physically on campus?
No, they're different courses. There are some in common, but on the campus operations, we only offer 7 programs, whereas we have a much larger offering, closer to 40 programs, SDL programs.
So let me take you back to the difference then in approach. So the physical college, the students on campus, how many students do you have across the 2 campuses at any one time?
350 students across the 2 campuses. So we have about 150 in Nicosia and 200 in Limassol.
So how did you cope? What did you immediately do with them then when this coronavirus hit? I presume you're in lockdown in Cyprus like the rest of the world since sometime mid-March?
Yes, I think it was, Cyprus was one of the earliest places to go in lockdown. They shut down airports, and of course universities and colleges were the first to be asked to cease operations. Then schools followed, kindergartens, and then essentially we went into full lockdown until last week, where we are now emerging out of the lockdown. Retail and bars are now open, as long as they only operate on the outside. So we were waiting for this to happen, and as soon as the government announced 2 infections in Cyprus, we just, we were having private conversations among us, but on the day the government announced 2 infections, and before they even suggested any lockdown measures, we called a meeting, and that's when we started thinking, how do we do this? And of course, we started thinking about how to socially distance students. And then a day or 2 later, the government helped because it announced that you will have to cease operation. And then we just took the decision. We're moving everything online. It was a Friday at around 5 when we decided we were moving online. And on Monday we had our first online class, and we haven't looked back since. We're still online.
That is some achievement, because these were physical courses that you were teaching, not online courses. So you brought everybody in and worked them like mad things for the entire weekend. You must have already had the bones of a plan that said these are the elements that are easiest to move online first. So this is it. Did it change the way you taught the remainder of the courses for the remainder of the year?
Well, we were, in some ways, we were lucky. In some other ways, we needed to be creative. So we operate on a year-long modules, which means that at about February, students hand in their assignments, and we spent most of March doing revision work, preparing students for the examinations in mid to late May. So the first thing we did, because we had to think very, very practically, and this is something I discuss on the blog that's on the EADL website. We thought, okay, what is online teaching? And I hope, my EADL colleagues will forgive me. We thought, we're not doing online teaching now, we will be doing online lecturing. And this is what we'll do. This is how the first week will come. You just put a camera in front of you, lecturer, and then you address the class. And meanwhile, and behind the scenes, we started doing the more careful and things needing more attention, which was, how to teach lecturers to share screen, how to give tests, how to make it more interactive. By that stage, a week into the pandemic, everybody was extremely tired of the dissonance created by Zoom and Skype or Microsoft Teams. I remember it was over 5 minutes. We said, okay, we need to decide what platform we use, and everybody just started going around. And everybody was tired, and my colleague said, "Guys, WebEx." And I hadn't been very familiar with WebEx because we use Microsoft Teams for our DL operations. And I just looked around, and for some reason, did it sound nicer than others? What is something they used? We were like, okay, WebEx. And we just bought licenses and we moved to that. So that was very, for me as a director of quality at CIM, and also as the person in charge of the DL operations, I could see that we needed some expertise gained through our DL operations, but at the same time, we just needed to adjust it fast. We were very, very lucky, I think, to work with people who are tech savvy, because they are millennials or, just the Generation X. So we didn't have anyone who feared. And we were talking about it at council. Everybody was, giving us congratulations. And I said we were very lucky. And then the director general said, yes, but I remember it was also a strategy about 5 years ago to bring in younger people. And so in some ways, I think it made sense, but, no one could have prepared us for this. But, disregarding age, I think what's important is that you have people who are fast learners and willing to do the work. We're also very lucky that we have small classes, that we have professionals. And I'll tell you something, Ellen, we saw a rise in attendance as soon as we moved to online classes. So we have evening classes, and we work with working individuals who found it so much easier to log in to the lectures. So we just kept checking the numbers. Attendance is not compulsory, and we have about 80% attendance, which is already high. And with online courses, we had close to 100, because I think there was curiosity. That will no doubt fizzle out, but that's how we approached it, as an exciting opportunity.
It's a very interesting statistic that the numbers actually went up, presumably because people didn't have the commute. So they'd saved the commute into work, they'd saved the commute home. So they'd had that extra hour or whatever in the evening. They had now sat down, stepped away from the computer for a while,
Yeah.
had their cup of coffee or something to eat or whatever, and come back to it refreshed. Very, very interesting. And particularly when it's not compulsory, they could choose to dodge it. Mind you, there's also a theory there that says possibly they were stressed out at home and it was a great escape, but we won't go there. We'll assume that they were enjoying work or whatever.
Yes.
What about on the distance side then? Because the distance learning that you already had in place obviously enhanced or brought skills or expertise to the taught side of the house. Did the distance side of your business change at all because of the pandemic?
It did, because we operated our own unique method. When we started in the 80s, we started on we modeled ourselves on Open University, like I imagine many DL ventures did. So what we do, and I think this is for cultural but also pedagogical reasons, is that for every student we have, we will send them a PDF of notes. We will give them access to our state-of-the-art custom-made platform. But we will also get out a box and put in books like the ones you see behind me. Stick in a ruler, a T-shirt, a cup, a pen, a USB stick. And then call DHL, and DHL will come pick it up, and they will deliver it within 48 hours to rural Uganda. Like ecosystem and economy in which we operate. So we first needed to talk to DHL about whether we would be able to continue to do that. It was fine for some countries in Europe, but there were so many destinations that couldn't be reached. So we had to reach out to students and say, you will still get your books, but as soon as is possible. Meanwhile, we'll send you the material. We'll give you access to the online library. Also brought in the database that we use here at the CIM Cyprus. So we expanded, we bought some more licenses. So we had to do that. And then we knew that in June, that's when we have exams. And our students go to local examination centers, usually the British Council or an embassy, somewhere where we trust, and take their exams there. So we needed to act fast, and we kept communicating with students, telling them we're onto this. But the reality is that I had to check, spend like an hour in the morning reading the news. The situation in Botswana was very different to the situation in Cameroon, South Africa, China. The US, we have some students there, Luxembourg, Italy, France. So it was just, we felt that we need to come with a blanket rule, but at the same time, there were so many geographical particularities that we needed to take into account. So when we decided that we're going for online exams, we sent an email to students, keeping fingers crossed that there won't be a backlash. A few students said, I'm in China. One of our students said, I'm in China, things are opening up again. And we were like, okay, well, we can do this. So we treat every student as an individual, and it's a different case. But it has been stressful organizing exams. We're talking about 250 different exams, changing the marking criteria, changing the way students send back their essays. Some of them could be typed in Microsoft Word or a fillable, editable PDF. Some of them included calculations. And when I talk about it with colleagues, I had a really interesting webinar with the Association of Commonwealth Universities, of which we are a part. I think no one can predict exactly how the assessment will go, whether it will be whether the scripts will be better and therefore they need to be the marks to be lowered, or whether we will need to inflate the marks, or whether it's early days. We're confident that we kept as many things the same as possible, and we're driven by dedication not to disadvantage any of the students now or any of the students who've taken exams, last January, physical exams. And that has been by far the most challenging thing for us, the assessment. I think the teaching hasn't been affected as much. I think the assessment remains a challenge.
It's really interesting because listen to you speak, I'm categorizing Europe into one area and the rest of the world into everything else. And I'm assuming that Europe is people have easy access to computers and easy access to the internet. So if they're studying, and I presume this is the reason why you post books, that it wouldn't actually be a problem to send them ebooks if there isn't an additional cost, there isn't a bandwidth that you're using. But if you're dealing with countries in Africa, then it makes a very big difference that people need to spend time online rather than reading those physical books. So I presume you've given them access to a library. Are you reckoning that it will also impact on the way that they do the assessments? Will they be less comfortable doing an assessment on a laptop somewhere than they would be in an examination center? Will it affect their ability to answer questions that are posed to them?
Many of them will. I think from my experience, so like my own personal experience, I think almost every one of our students is in a possession of a smartphone and has access to a 3G or sometimes even a 4G network, but not many have access to a computer, a working computer, and at home. So that's one of the main reasons why we send out books. The other reason is because every year we do a survey, and every year the students say, what I love about CIM is that they send us a book. So I think there's a kind of like gift economy that is as important in Cyprus, the southern Mediterranean, as it is in many countries in Africa. We were very clear that we did not want the assessment to be assignments. I think that's another exercise, and that you will be disadvantaging the student if you couldn't guarantee access to a library. So we thought the best way would be to ask questions, whether it's mini case studies or reflective questions, instead of asking them to do to write down 4 answers. We have asked them to do 3, giving them more time because, perhaps for you and me, typing is faster and easier than handwriting. Remember handwriting? Whereas for
very few people do it anymore, yeah.
So for many others, handwriting is easier, perhaps even more natural, more expressive, more. So we have allowed an extra half an hour, so asking them to do fewer questions, more time. And then we had to be very clear, and we included that in the instructions, in the answering booklet we're sending, what it is that we're asking. And I think we have changed the idea of assessment, and it became, shall I say, a little bit friendlier. Tell us what you've learned, and tell us how you've learned it. Tell us how almost all questions where possible have a COVID-19 angle. How did you respond to the pandemic? How did your company respond to it? What did you learn? So I think marking will be very interesting, especially the theoretical subjects. So to answer your question, I think yes, inevitably. So if you can't have that, we thought, what else can we have, and how can we make this interesting both for us and for them? Like I said, we'll see. We may see each other in September, and maybe we'll find ourselves taking 20 marks off, deflating the marks. Maybe we'll find ourselves with scripts that are, plagiarized. This is something we told them, copy paste as much as you'd like. We won't take that into account. We're not checking your ability to copy paste. I suspect it might be different in Africa than it will be with our students in Cyprus, who, we're naturally drawn to Google, or even if we know something, it's just constant doubting of what we know. So there will be a lot of like sifting and filtering the exam papers. So I think it will be challenging for lecturers as well, the faculty in marking.
And actually, your biggest challenge possibly will be to make sure that the marking is in some way consistent or reflective globally, so that an A which you achieve in Cyprus is equivalent to an A which you achieve in Uganda or wherever, that the standard is the same, and yet the answers that you're receiving may differ greatly. That's a huge challenge. I would love to talk to you again after all those papers have been corrected and see how you get on. Looking to the future, how has it changed, or have you had a chance to figure out how it will impact your next intake of students in, I presume, September?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as regards to Cyprus operations, I mean, this is this word has been used so much, but it is really unprecedented. The closest to what we are experiencing now is probably the 2013 financial crash of Cyprus, and that has. In what we saw with that is actually the number of our students going dramatically upwards. I think we were, and again, partly is luck and timing, partly is sort of like long-term thinking and good housekeeping. We didn't have debt. We were not exposed to the banks, they're hindering their ability to lend money, and at the right time we just invested more in buildings and in advertising, and we have affordable fees. That's one of, if not the main thing about CIM. We work with working individuals, evening-only classes, and affordable fees. So students who would otherwise try to go to the UK or to the continent or to Greece found that their parents couldn't afford to send them abroad. It was much cheaper for them to stay in Cyprus, work during the day, study in the evening. So we expect to have the same numbers, if not increase, and we have had a 10% year-on-year increase for the last 10 years. So in that sense, I suspect we might be able to attract students who would otherwise go to the UK, whose brand has been severely damaged. I think the British brand. I can't think right now of many people who will send their kids to any British university right now. Of course, things will change. So I think we are hoping, and we have reason to think that we'll keep the same numbers. We are lucky and happy that our lecturers have had to very quickly learn how to use both our platform, which, this platform we developed it 15 years ago, and we kept telling every year the lecturers, use the chat function, use the record function. They never did. Now they do. So I think that will stay. I think more and more students will come to us and say, I can't come to class, can I follow online? So this is something that we need to discuss with the Ministry of Education and the Quality Assurance Agency here in Cyprus, whether that would be accepted, that sort of like blended method. But I think it would be very difficult to go back to a kind of like, forget what you saw, that sort of like matrix situation where you're like, that's gone, go back to. Yes, and for our DL operations, we saw some evidence that student numbers might go up, and then some evidence that it's a terrible time to register new students. We are adjusting our advertising budgets, and it's almost like also an ethical decision. instead of spending more on advertising, we have gathered all these potential students. How about we offer discounts to them? So instead of spending X amount of money on reaching out audiences right now, how about we just give this money back, and
It's
to
a
our
very interesting reflection on where people are at in society, that if they have lost their jobs or they're struggling with will they have a job in 3 or 4 months' time and they still want to study, it's very interesting that instead of attracting new people, you would choose to reduce the fees for them. Before I let you go, tell me, I want you to give me one piece of advice for anybody who thinks that, though mind you, on the basis of our chat, I'm sure they do not think distance education is easy, but who thinks that, well, I need to just flip over and move into distance education. What's the one tip that you would give somebody who's looking at providing online education or online training or online lectures or webinars, where they're trying to give people something back? Your key tip.
I would say it's very important to realize that this is different, and you have to respect that it's different. So if you're thinking this is my model and I'm just going to move it online, I would say that. And the other thing that for us is a challenge. So I'm not offering this as a sort of like sage advice. Go on and do this as a challenge. But I think definitely one that one must think is, who is your audience? Who would you like your students to be? It's very different to teach to different kinds of people. So I think as you're moving, if your audience would be the same as your students, then you have to develop learning objectives and media strategies that are different. So recognize its difference and think who you would like your audience to be. There's enough DL operators out there, and there are enough students. You just need to choose your who you would like to serve, and if you can't serve everybody, then that's fine. I think one needs to do that if one wants to be successful.
I think that's a super piece of sage advice to end on. Christos Hadjiannis from the Cyprus Institute of Marketing. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you.
I'm Ellen Gunning from the PR Training Academy. This has been an EADL broadcast, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Essential online training solutions for communications professionals. The PR Training Academy.